I'd like to call the Silver Lake Regional School Committee meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded by Area 58, and I'd like to begin the meeting by calling for a nomination for the position of chair. Jason.
Dr. Prue, I would like to make a motion. If there's a single objection from the committee, I will withdraw my motion. I would like to make a motion for a slate of officers. I would like to make a motion for Paula to be the chair, for Gordon to be our vice chair, for Lucas to be our secretary, and for Amy to be our assistant treasurer.
Second.
Oh. No, go ahead, Mike.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor? All in favor?
Silent vote.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Turn it
you.
over to our chair.
And thank you, Jason. Thank you, folks, for the opportunity to be chair again. I appreciate your trust and your support. So, continuing our reorganization, in the link that Karen shared with us, we do have our list of subcommittees. And perhaps we can actually start with the legislative agent. And Jason, if you would be willing to.
I'd be happy to continue with that now.
Okay. Thank you. Administrative review. Jason, you led that one this past year. Would you be willing to continue?
I'm happy to continue in any of the roles. I'm also happy to work with someone who'd like to step into any of these and not be necessarily on the committees. We did change the format of how admin review approaches the superintendent's evaluation. We tried to bring it to the professional standards that we have for our principals and our teachers. I think we did a great job with that this year and with the team on the admin review subcommittee. I'm more than happy to continue to have a second year in that vein, but I'm also more than happy to step back from a few of the plates that I've been working on recently.
Okay. All right, so I throw it out there to the committee who would like to participate on that committee.
I'd like to do admin review again.
Good.
With Wally not doing it really much, I ended up doing it anyway, and I enjoyed it.
Excellent.
And Amy, you were definitely one of the key players on that this year.
I'm happy to do admin review.
Thank you, Jeannie. Okay, can we get one more? Jason?
Yeah, I'm absolutely happy to stay on anything, but I want to make room for others to have opportunities as well.
Okay. As far as alternates, I'm happy to be an alternate.
I'll stay on as an alternate.
Ex-
as well.
Thanks, Mike. All righty. Negotiations, I'd like to keep this consistent if I could ask.
I'll stay on.
Okay,
I'll do it too.
all righty, and I'll stay on, just because we're still in the middle of some contracts, and I think that makes sense. We do need a fourth and one alternate. I will say that I think this committee, which has been incredibly busy the last year and a half, I think it's winding down, so I don't think the time commitment will be what it had been the last 18 months. I hope I didn't curse myself by saying that.
I'm happy to step into it.
Okay. If we could get one alternate. Mark or Lucas, could I ask one of you to be?
I can be it.
Because Amy and Jason cannot.
I can be.
Would you mind? Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Negotiations.
You can stick with it.
Put them on everything.
Plymouth Area Collaborative Use.
I really enjoyed it. My only concern is it does in the fall conflict with my math team responsibilities.
Okay.
So if someone else wants to do it, I would welcome that, but if not, I did really, really enjoy it, so I'd be happy to continue.
Okay. Does anyone else have interest in stepping into that role? Thank
I'm
you.
fine with that, I just might miss a meeting or two in the fall.
Okay. Thank you. Alrighty, policy. We need 2 members for policy and an alternate. I'd be happy to be on policy. I'll be one. A second and an alternate.
Michael, are you still on the policy for?
Yeah, I'm on- yeah.
So, makes sense.
I'll be on it for this,
Okay,
much so.
I'll be the alternate.
thank you.
We don't, but we have Jen Carroll too.
Yes, that is true. So we have 1 member not here this evening from Halifax. We should certainly include her in some of these. Not knowing her preferences yet. Okay, let's continue on. If we need to reshuffle a little bit in July at the next meeting, we can. CTE. I knew,
I was expecting that one.
Swerve that one.
okay.
Yeah. I guess.
Lucas, absolutely, thank you. Okay, Mark and Lucas.
I'd like to stay on if possible.
You like to stay on, Michael? Thank you.
Yeah, with the new program we're trying to breathe some life into, I'd like to be on it as well.
Alrighty, excellent. And then let's put Jen,
You have an alternate for policies listed.
an alternate for policy was,
Which,
Mike.
which,
No.
Mark.
Mark,
oh, Mark, I'm sorry.
I'm on it, yeah.
Mike's-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mike was on it.
Right,
And Mark is the alternate.
okay, sorry, I just put M and then alternate.
I want to give that to the missing member, I'm happy with that. We'll talk about it.
Alternate for policy.
If you, I'll yield if you need the position.
That might not be a bad one, Mark, actually, if you don't mind.
With Jen Carroll now.
Yeah, as the alternate.
And I'm on policy at the elementary.
Okay. So CTE, we have 4. And then do we,
We haven't had an alternate
yeah,
in
we
the past.
haven't had an alternate. Okay. All right. Safer.
I can stay on that.
Okay,
I'll do that.
okay. And then 2 more and an alternate. You'll stay on?
I think Jason should stay on that.
Yeah. Let's put Jen on there. And if nobody else, I'm happy to remain the alternate.
Jason on this then?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So how many we got?
4.
4.
Gordon, Mark,
Jason?
Jen and Jason, right?
Jen Carroll.
Yeah.
It's Jason.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just lost my.
calendar reviews, we never met.
Yeah,
I think that was kind of like some people in the last group. I think Leslie Ann was kind of interested in that, and Emily.
right. Do you want to just remove that?
I'd be fine with just removing that if anybody else really strongly cares.
Okay. Do we want to do just to cover ourselves, a motion and a second, just vote it off?
So I move that we eliminate the calendar review subcommittee.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Very good. Revolving funds, we haven't had a committee on that for a while. I do want to revisit this, as I had said in the fall, as an agenda item. And then single signature warrants. We could keep that as is if nobody objects, and then just have an alternate.
Paula, for the revolving fund study, we also mentioned that, well, we might want to bring it to the whole committee.
Mhm.
Any follow-up work, we might want to just put into safer,
Yes.
right?
So do we
Wrap
want
that
to get,
into
do
the
we want to
mission.
remove that one as well?
I think that with the new acronym SAFER, which isn't new anymore, that fees and revenues could be covered with revolving funds as well.
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah, I'd make a motion to remove the revolving fund study and have the work of that group wrapped into the safety facilities fees and revenues subcommittee.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Very good, thank you.
We just need an alternate for,
Yeah, so single signature warrants, if somebody could be an alternate. Jeannie, thank you. Alrighty, folks, thank you. Okay, moving to approval of minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from our May 18th regular meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, I have one comment on it. In number 6, it says, and I'd have to bring them up, I don't have them in front of me, preschool will be, or the preschool is, something about the regional agreement. I need to bring the minutes up, I read it the other day. We haven't finalized the regional agreement yet, so I would want to change that language to will be or expected to be in that sentence. And I apologize for being so vague.
do you want to see?
Yeah, can I, Karen,
Sure.
sorry. I read them the other night, made a note. It just, we haven't finalized it, so it sounds too presumptuous. It says the preschool has been incorporated into Silver Lake starting.
Will be.
Yes, expected to be.
Expected to be.
Yeah,
I withdraw my motion and I resubmit the acceptance of the May 18th meeting with Paula's amendments.
I have one, this is very, very minor, I just noticed my dad's name is spelled wrong under others present.
Oh, he's printed
Oh, no,
it.
he's got dementia, so
Oh, he's so sweet.
probably
Okay, sure,
spelled it
let
wrong.
me,
It's
happy to fix that.
P-A-U-L, not P-U-L.
P-A-U-L,
Yeah.
okay.
is your father's name Paul?
Yes.
Oh. Okay.
Motion
All
to
those-
accept with both for.
Yes.
Second.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Abstain?
Abstain, okay, Jeannie abstains.
Okay.
Okay, moving on, support for the Conservation Commission project.
Yes. In your packet tonight, you will see a request from the conservation agent, the Kingston Conservation Agent, regarding a project. It's called the Culvert Project, and there is a document that was forwarded to the chair that is now in your packet, which highlights some of the things that they would be doing in this area on the district's property. And I believe Matthew Pinella is here this evening in case you have any questions about the project.
Thank you. People had a chance to,
I would love to hear about it. I'm just reading through it. I'm trying to visualize it in a way, and what it's trying to do, and it sounds sort of massive.
I can give you a breakdown. Where do I go? Do I just talk from here?
if you want to stand up over here, if you're more comfortable there, if you want the podium, the floor is yours, whatever makes you most comfortable.
Whatever works for you guys. I know when we have our meetings, we have to have everybody on microphones so that people all can hear. Yeah, I can give you a quick breakdown of the project, and then I did bring plans if anybody wants to see specifics. Basically, what we're doing right now is the permitting for the Lake Street culvert replacement. We're looking at probably a year or two out from actual construction. So what we're looking for now is support from the committee on just the project in general. When we apply for all our permits, that it shows that all of the landowners are in approval of the project. Basically, underneath Lake Street, there is a metal pipe culvert. So that's problematic for fish passage because it gets perched. during low water levels, or it gets flooded and creates a really sort of intense, high velocity water environment for fish to pass through. It's also problematic for resiliency. So the more big storms we get, we have pictures of that culvert completely submerged and the water's just about up at the level of the street. So as storms get, more intense and more frequent, we're looking at replacing that with something that will pass more water through, both for the fish so that they can get up to Silver Lake, and also for storm resiliency so that you don't have that situation where Lake Street could technically get undermined or damaged from a big storm. It's going to bring it basically from a 2-foot wide, or maybe 3-foot wide, off the top of my head, metal pipe to a 19-foot wide natural bottom stream bed. So it's really exciting on our end for fish passage. We're looking at passing herring and American eels all the way up into Silver Lake where they used to spawn, thousands of years ago. We've blocked them now from getting back there. So this is one of like a multi-step project added to a fish ladder that's going to be installed at the Forge Pond Dam. That should get all of that passage done. The part that would be concerning to this committee is there's a small parcel in between Lake Street and Old Lake Street. So you guys own one little wedge, and then on the other side, the city of Brockton owns an even smaller wedge. The part that the committee would have ownership over doesn't involve the culvert replacement. It involves a stormwater improvement that we engineered as part of this process. Right now, stormwater from Lake Street just dumps right off into the Jones River. No treatment, nothing. It's just a little swale, and anything that has motor oil, antifreeze, anything from the road, fertilizer from people's lawns, dog waste, all of it now just dumps directly into the river. So what we're proposing as part of this whole project for replacing the culvert is to install what's known as BMPs, or best management practices, so that would get some of that water to be treated and infiltrated before reaching the river, so cleaning it and making the river more healthy. So that's the part that really would be concerning, I think, to this committee, is that we will be working on your property installing that. It will then be a feature that will be maintained by the town, like we maintain all of our other stormwater features. Any specific questions, or I can show anybody, exactly what I'm talking about in the plans?
What current use is Silver Lake Regional High School or Middle School using that land for presently?
I would have been here sooner if I had realized you guys owned it. So I have no idea.
I believe the answer is that we do not use that land for any athletic or academic purpose.
Correct.
It is, I believe, 100% wetlands, that little wedge, or close to it. It really is just a tiny wedge in between two roads.
The previous school committees, we tried hard to get Kingston to take that as part of the road layout, or as a parcel by itself, and there was a legal issue. Refresh my memory, but I think the committee voted unanimously to transfer it to the town of Kingston, but we were unable to do so. If you find a way to do so, I will come back with this committee and to repeat that. I'm not speaking for the committee, but more than happy to find a way to put that in the town of Kingston. And we looked at that site for this similar project years ago too, and we were all in favor of it at that time. I think it's a great idea for the environment and to help with the potential flooding issue on Lake Street.
Agreed, and I could definitely look into that. Yeah, if there was some sort of major legal hurdle back then, maybe that still exists and maybe it won't be possible. But if it's possible, the committee, it's not something that we would want to have oversight over, we can certainly try to do that.
So this is a lot less related to the land usage. It's not terribly within our scope, but out of curiosity, in the restoration and trying to restore fish passage and things like that, what sort of levels of success have other communities seen in doing that? I know that the herring runs have fairly well been wiped out, but then various communities have tried to reopen passageways and make it successful. And I just haven't haven't heard to what degree any of that's been successful.
I'm very optimistic about it. The runs in general in the last few years have been down. You know, passage is not the only problem for species like herring. They're also pretty heavily fished out in the open ocean by trawlers, things like that. They're fed on heavily by species like striped bass, bluefish, species that have rebounded and increased their numbers. So there's a lot of other factors weighing on them. Silver Lake is, I think, the 12th largest natural lake in the state, and it is historic breeding habitat for herring. We haven't had access to it in a meaningful way for hundreds of years. It's, you know, my opinion, and I believe the opinion of the Division of Marine Fisheries, that if we can get them back in there, and more importantly, then get them back out into the ocean as juveniles, that could have a really strong impact on their population. As of right now, they have, you know, very little areas actually. Doesn't answer your question, but I believe that.
So you're gonna have to do something intentional. It's not like they have 200-year-old memories that are just gonna sit and drive them into the Silver Lake. So
Other
do something
projects have had success. It's a big movement across the whole country, essentially. Taking out dams that don't need to be there, taking out blockages that don't need to be there. So right now, there's nothing we can do about the dam. City of Rockland's dam, they need it for their water supply, but what we can do is get connectivity as best we can. So it's, like I said, the culvert is one step, and then the fish ladder is another step. What's there right now for a fish ladder is a temporary unit that's pretty difficult for them to get through, and it does not flow during low flow, sort of like the summer months when the juvenile herring can get back out to the ocean. Very often there's no water coming over that dam at all. So not part of this project. The second phase is going to be a new fish ladder that's an innovative design. It can pass fish between 3 inches and 3 feet in size during low flow scenarios, and it's going to be cut, I think, a couple of feet down into that dam. All of that tied together, I'm optimistic that it will work. If it doesn't work, it will at least have the effects for resiliency. It will have the effect of being able to better protect the local infrastructure from, you know, more severe and more frequent storms.
So out of curiosity, because this is something I keep noodling around, the Silver Lake, actually, the school, this plot, sits on a lot of sort of natural resources, and the way that we keep kind of growing CTE, would at some point you see any sort of role for say students in a CTE program that was devoted to, say, wildlife management or conservation or something like that, to be participatory in things like, I don't know, seeding more herring out of Silver Lake and helping with sort of hatchery type of operations or whatnot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Anything, really. Part of my position sits on the advisory board for CTE, so that's always my angle when I'm in these meetings. I'm always saying, hey, here's some things that we could do. You know, this industry, the conservation, environmental industry, a lot of people like it, a lot of people want to get into it, so it's just something I think that there are, you know, definitely good ways that we could get students involved in this sort of stuff that wouldn't just be something that they like doing, but would prepare them well for going forward, trying to get a career in environmental and natural resources.
Okay.
Jeannie?
I guess I'm just wondering if there's any funding sources where it would come from, and then if you know an approximate timeline of the project, and then maybe an approximate timeline to determine whether the project's been successful or not, or if it's something that's going to have to be revisited with the committee later on.
Right. So right now, we got a grant this past year from the state for $75,000 to finalize the engineering and to get the permitting done. So that's where we're at now. We already applied for funding from NOAA that would have paid for the whole project. We were denied, and I expect that we won't be denied this year. There was one project in Eastern Mass that had been in the pipeline for something like 20 years and couldn't get funding. everybody kind of wanted that one to get through. So now that that's through, I feel pretty confident that we make a compelling case to get funding for that. If we don't get funding from them, we will probably get funding from the state. Not expecting the town to have to pull in a lot of money for this. So timeline, like I said, it depends on how long permitting takes. The application that we're filling out right now that we need your approval for is something that takes a long time. So my hope is that we're roughly a year out, we may be more likely 2 years out, depending on how quickly the permitting gets done. We are targeting July and August for construction, as to not interfere with students and families coming here during the school year. And it's also the best year in terms of the ecology of the stream that's you're doing the work when you're at the lowest of lows. So that's it.
Any other questions, comments?
I make a motion that the Silver Lake Regional School Committee support the Conservation Commission's culvert project in any way possible.
I'll second.
Any for,
I would also ask that in perhaps a second motion, if in fact you vote to support it, to also authorize the chair to sign on behalf of the committee.
do you want to do a second motion for that, or just amend?
Included.
Okay, I withdraw my initial. I make a motion that the Silver Lake Regional School Committee support the Conservation Commission's culvert project and allow the chair of the Silver Lake Regional School Committee to sign any paperwork pursuant to this project.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I would just love to see, to Gordon's idea about CT incorporating any kind of student participation with it. That'd be great.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed or abstained? No? Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Okay. Social hosting.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm asking the committee this evening to consider a change to our school's social hosting requirement. I'll start by sharing a little bit of a history lesson on it. For more than 10 years now, our school has required any student who wishes to purchase a ticket to the prom, their parent or guardian is required to attend one of our social hosting presentations. And so to help fulfill this requirement, we bring in an outside speaker. For the past 10 years, it's been Kathy Sullivan to speak to both parents and students, but we require parents to attend the evening session, and then we provide 2 alternative opportunities, once in the morning and once in the afternoon on different days, to try to accommodate as many parent and guardian schedules as possible. And the 2 additional presentations are hosted by our school resource officer. When Mr. Kelly was principal, he worked along with our PTO to get this rolling as a requirement. At the time, the school committee voted in favor of it. It has always been a great and moving presentation, but in the last several years, I think as we come out of the pandemic and learn there are other ways to reach parents and more information to share with them, I would like to propose that we no longer make it a requirement for parents to attend, but maybe still continue to strongly encourage parent attendance for a couple of reasons. The biggest one is the funding source. The PTO board, the current PTO board, has determined that they are no longer going to pay for this speaker every year. They'd like to use their funds for other school activities and events. I've also experienced in the last several years, it's a lot harder for our parents to make it to an evening presentation or even a morning presentation because they're working. And so we do our best to accommodate them on their own schedule to ensure that every student is able to go to the prom, but it's become quite a burden on our main office staff to accommodate dozens of parents throughout the day leading up to prom to try to get them to view the recording of the video of the presentation. I also, in my experience, our presentations have always been solely on alcohol, and I would argue that kids aren't just drinking alcohol, they are experimenting with other things as well. And so we'd love to look at speakers who address other things, everything from vaping to drug abuse, pill use, whatnot. but I would need your vote to do that. And our idea is that we would still encourage parents to either attend these presentations that we bring in, but maybe alternate the speaker and the topic from year to year to encourage more community members to attend. But also make it easier for parents who cannot leave work to attend these presentations and provide some sort of a virtual presentation for them to watch. And maybe they sign off or initial, they watched it. They sort of understand that it is their responsibility to make sure that their children are making smart choices at home. So, happy to answer any questions. Again, it's a very brief history of it. Happy to answer any questions or talk about any concerns you may have.
So I'm queasy. We would still educate the students. The students would still be,
Yeah, we do a pre-prom assembly every year. And actually this past year, we did one in the fall too, close to homecoming, figuring we could target more than just our seniors. So we would continue to have our in-house presentations for students during the school day.
okay. Mark?
So I think your last part about having the parents review a presentation and then say, somehow sign off electronically or physically that they had actually viewed the presentation, I think is fine. But without that, I think the school would be more liable if they haven't reached out to the parents to give them that information. And I was here when we did this the last time. It was a tough call to start that, but I certainly understand why parents can't physically attend in today's environment, and it's how the scheduling is very difficult. Do you have a 30-minute presentation available?
We do, right, which is what we show them, but this time they come into the building, right, during open building hours to watch it if they can't make one of the 3 scheduled presentations. So the month leading up to prom, we have probably 5 or 6 parents every day coming in to watch a video in the office, just so their kid can go to prom.
Is there any reason why that can't be presented to them, available for them to electronically sign?
No, so our school resource officer would have to do one that we could share with them, right, because we don't have the rights to show this one outside of the school building. They sort of gave us permission to use it in building, in-house, if you will, but our school resource officer, his presentation is made by him. We could digitize and make a virtual copy of that to share with parents, either in video form or PowerPoint or some combination thereof. He'd be
So
willing
if you
to work
want
with
to,
us
if you
on
want
it.
to coach, youth soccer, youth football, something like that, you have to take mandatory concussion training. And it's, video with presentation with assessment. And assessment is relatively simple, but it pretty well guarantees that you both watched it and you paid enough attention to be able to pass it. I would feel a lot more comfortable if we had something like that.
Yeah.
So I would suspect there are probably some programs that are off the shelf that I would hope would not be obscenely expensive. And if not, I would suspect that we could probably develop something in a pretty low-cost delivery mechanism that had some way of showing they at least clicked through the presentation and then answered some questions and then certified. So I feel less comfortable with it just being, sure, I'll sign a thing saying that I did this, and more comfortable with some kind of something that has them step through it and
Yeah.
show that they
I think we
picked
can
up
use
something.
ParentSquare to set something like that up.
I was just gonna actually bring up
We
with
can create forms in it.
Google, you could do like a Google form, that's actually how some of our PD is enforced that way, like, did you attend the PD? You had to fill out the form that
Yeah.
showed you'd attended it.
Yep.
I think flexibility is good because it isn't just prom. There was this unofficial junior prom that the school wasn't involved in, so there were already kids doing these social things, and then homecoming is all 4 grades, so I think something that would be more flexible, that could be shown at different times of the year, and then parents sign off on it at any time of the year. I think that would be a really good idea if that could go through ParentSquare.
That'd be great.
So if you're looking for a vote, just to be able to change it, I think I would vote in favor of giving you the ability to change it. Like I said, I'd feel a lot more comfortable if it were something that we had a pretty traceable record of them being able to step through something and answer questions.
Perfect. We can do that.
I think it would be very distracting if there's 5 or 6 parents coming in, and I totally get why that has to happen, but it's a burden on the office staff, and it's also a distraction during the school day to have that many, but I understand why they have to do it.
Yeah.
So I do think that giving you the ability to put together something a lot less formal would be much more cost effective, I think, as well.
Thank you.
Do you want to circle back with us with what you are going to do more concretely, or would you like us
So
to?
I feel comfortable with, we can take our school resource officer can take his presentation, we can make it virtual, and still ADA accessible, and include using parents where we can create some sort of mechanism where students have to parents and guardians verify that they have completed and read and watched the whole thing, and then we have that on file, with them signing it.
Okay.
The beauty of Parent Square too is it is intuitive enough, it'll keep track of who has and hasn't completed it, so when we send out the reminders, it will only go to the people who haven't completed it, not those who have. So, like currently when I send out the reminders, parents are like, did I do that? I don't know. So, that's what the committee is, if the committee is comfortable with that, I feel comfortable that confident that we can create that in lieu of requiring them to come in person for a presentation. And then they have all year to complete it if it just needs to be done before senior prom.
Right.
Technically, they have 4 years to do it.
I guess I would also ask that there just be a communication sent out that maybe that it's changing, that the format is changing, just so
Yep.
that parents aren't waiting for something and then,
Yep, it would be included in the senior bulletin, which goes out in August, so, well in advance, everything they need to do.
And could I ask, when you get the product completed, could you get the committee a copy of it?
Sure.
Thank
The
you.
presentation? The presentation or the forms?
Yeah, the presentation, yeah, please.
Yep.
So we need a motion, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. I move that we give Principal Gill the authority to change the social hosting presentation requirement to a electronically delivered presentation and assessment that verifies that parents have read and understood the materials.
I'll second. Is that a comfortable
Yeah,
language?
yeah,
Okay.
that works, thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
all right.
Aye.
Thank you, I appreciate it,
Thank you.
as do my staff and the parents.
Thanks for coming
Tara
tonight.
knows. It's a little crazy.
Principal Gill, thanks for coming this
Thank you.
evening for
I
the
appreciate it. No,
one
thank you for
topic as well.
squeezing this topic in. It's helpful for our summer planning, so thank
Thanks.
you all.
Okey-doke. E&D certification.
So our E&D was certified officially on June 8th, and our E&D unencumbered funds sit at right around $1 million. The 5% of our operating budget would be about 1.5 million, so we're under that. No monies will be going back to the towns, but again, we have been utilizing E&D funds for our capital plan now for 8 years, and I just need to re-motion our capital plan funds coming from E&D now that we have that fully certified. So I make a motion that the Silver Lake Regional School Committee approve the use of $573,683 of the E&D funds to fund the 2023-2024 fiscal year capital plan.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. And thank you. Thank you. All right, teacher and para
Stay late.
hire for pre-K discussion and possible vote.
So in the last school committee meeting, it's my understanding that Assistant Superintendent Brian Lynch presented the need for an administrator for the pre-K program in Silver Lake because we are advocating that Silver Lake be recognized as a part of the Silver Lake region. And it was also shared with us that given the numbers that have signed up for pre-K, that there is a need to open an additional class with a teacher and a para. These positions typically would be paid for using the pre-K revolving account. We are working on restructuring the Silver Lake programs, as you know, with regards to the funding sources and things of that nature. And originally, we had planned to have a joint meeting about that issue this evening, but we will be rescheduling that once all of our committees have reorganized. But we wanted to bring it to this committee because when there's a new position, and this wasn't part of our budget discussion at the time, we wanted you to be aware before we posted any positions and make sure that if you had any questions, we could try to answer them. We believe we have enough in the account to cover these additional positions based upon the feedback we received from our special education director. However, some of the grant funding that's used for the Silver Lake pre-K revolving account is grant. And so for the upcoming budget season, we anticipate that how grants are allocated may change, and that may have an impact on the overall budget request that you see moving forward in the next budget cycle. What exactly that looks like, we're not quite sure yet because we're not sure how the grants will be structured moving forward.
And that's the grants being structured because of the transition that we're experiencing.
Yes, in the way in the past that we used to fund extended school year summer programming. So that's something that the committees will also have to take a look at and determine how to best move forward with how those programs will be funded in the future.
So we believe that there's enough money right now that's available to Silver Lake Regional School Committee to cover the creation of these positions in totality for FY24? Or do we have a financial exposure potential?
We have enough in the revolving account.
The revolving account is sufficient to cover that,
And
I think
we can access that?
yes,
Okay.
to pay the cost to run the preschool program.
Once we use the funds to pay for it in FY24, does that replenish it all for FY25, or is that something that's going to have to be added to the budget for FY25?
I think I think we still have to figure that out with Jesse. I think that's where some of our questions have come from is what is the mechanism to make that piece work?
All right.
But through 24, we'd still be funding it the way we're funding it presently, correct? Yes.
I make motion that we add a teacher and a para, so we have enough classrooms in the pre-K to run the program the way it's supposed to be run.
Second.
Do you need any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Compensation rates.
Thank you. So last month I came to you all and explained that there are different substitute rates for the food service and custodian workers in different districts. And essentially it was brought to my attention through word of mouth, and I think there had been some institutional memory about what these rates were, but they actually hadn't been codified. So I've gone around to the different school committees and made a recommendation that these rates be tied to the step one rate of the collective bargaining agreement. In Halifax and Kingdom, that was really simple because the rates were, within 50 cents to $1 of the sub rate and the step one rate. In Silver Lake, it's more complicated because the step one custodian rate here, the sub rate right now is $19 an hour, and the step one rate is $24.98, which is a really significant increase. One idea I would suggest that the committee consider is there is also right now in the collective bargaining agreement a category of employees, there are no categories currently employed under this, as a part-time custodian. That rate is currently $22.64 an hour, which seems, like more comparable to what your sub rate is right now. So I guess I would just ask the committee to consider, how do you want to move forward with the sub rate? Again, the institutional memory number is $19 an hour. Your step one rate is $24.98 for a standard custodian, and a part-time custodian would be $22.64. There's nothing to say that you can't create whatever number you would like, but just from an operational and management perspective, I think there would be some benefit for there being some consistency about these sub rates being tied to some rate in a collective bargaining agreement.
In the Halifax and Kingston rates that you used for the increase were what?
So those, again, the previous word of mouth rate in Halifax was 1827. When it got tied to the collective bargaining agreement, it went to 1854 for this year, 1882 next year. In Kingston, the previous rate was $20.43 when tied to the collective bargaining agreement. This year it went to $21.43. Next year it'll go to $22.43. Plympton doesn't have a CBA.
So if we accepted the temporary custodian rate of 22, would be pretty close to the comparable rate
Correct.
in Kingston anyway.
This is for substitute custodians and food services?
This is for substitute custodians. When I last was here, I talked about food service too. In light of recent developments in our negotiations, I would advise that we maybe consider that issue after the contract is settled.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we tie the substitute custodian rate to the part-time custodian. Step one.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Disagree? Abstain? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming with an option for us to consider. Putting
Nope.
something on the table for us to chomp on a little bit.
And I only wish I had it the first time.
All righty. Okay, regional agreement. I wanted to talk a little bit and give an update on that and talk specifically about two things in it that I want to have a committee discussion and some agreement on. So this has been such a labor of love. I got to tell you, I had no idea. Jeannie's smiling over there. She's been calm. I had no idea it was going to be this dramatic of a process, but it's a good process. I don't discount it. So we have our next DESI meeting June 22nd, and I'm hopeful that the version we give in that meeting, that we vet in that meeting, is pretty much finalized in our eyes and can then go to DESI's legal staff for the final blessing, because that is the final step. Two of the things that are in the agreement I think we should chat about are, first of all, the June 1st transition date that has been in the document for decades. And that is when we have elections in the towns. For instance, you both had a May something date where you were voted onto this committee, but you don't join technically as a member till June 1st. There's benefits and maybe, disadvantages to that. I think one of the advantages is consistency, because the towns don't have the same election dates. The second advantage I see is we traditionally finalize and deliver the superintendent's evaluation in the month of May, and it's nice to have a consistent Silver Lake membership to do that. And that's very primary in my mind. I wanted to see if the committee agreed to stay with the June 1st date before we present a final version to DESI. Jeannie?
I appreciate the June 1st date, and I almost wish that the elementary committees would establish it because of when our town meetings are. as well. It'd be nice to know that we're all going to be on the committee to present to town meeting. If it's a contested election, you don't always know that. You don't know who the committee members are that are going to present to town meeting. So I think that the June 1st date, while it is a month after like our election, I think it's necessary to tie in the end of the fiscal year as well, with July 1st being.
That's a very good point as well.
It's also good as a new member to have that month to like attend the meeting and kind of get to know people before you actually have to act in any kind of official capacity.
So, I don't know that we need a motion. I think if we're in agreement, that's the way we've drafted the agreement, so there's no change there. If we're comfortable, I just wanted to sort of gives consideration to that. Okay, so seeing no other strong
I
thoughts.
think it would be nice to let the town clerks know that that's the case. We had, I don't know if you had the problem, but our town clerk in Kingston was convinced that he took office immediately after the election. So, a little education.
Yes, absolutely. And I think as we move through the process of amending the agreement, meeting with the town officials to vet it in its final forms, I think we need to, before going to town meeting in the fall, I think we'll start to open up some of the knowledge base there as well. But again, a good point as well. I remember the year Gordon Andrews was rolling off of the committee, he thought the election day was the last day he was responsible for sitting on this committee, and we did drag him back for one more meeting, so Halifax kind of got the message then. The second topic in the agreement I wanted to chat about tonight is DESE feels that our voting should be more weighted to the census in a more refined way. And we've talked about this a few different times with them. And Russ, I'm going to hand it to you to try and explain Jesse's last position on this, because I thought it was a little kludgy.
Yeah. So they sent us a Excel spreadsheet with a couple different methods to do it. And basically the goal of that is to get to like units per person. So you have full units and everybody has their number of units, which they've indicated need to be adjusted because the census changed and so they're a little bit off. What I said in response is I would prefer just to have it simple that, you know, you have 7% of the vote, you might have 10%, you have 13%. So you just do it based on 100%. And you don't have an Excel spreadsheet at all. You each would have your percentage vote. I think they were more used to the other way of doing it, but I have clients that just use a percentage of the vote. And as you see tonight, most of your votes, it doesn't, you're not even going to have to calculate it because they're either unanimous or close to it. However, on a close vote, we would have to have a sheet where we calculate and make sure there's either a majority or a 2/3 vote on certain topics. The clients I had to do it that way, it's not an issue. I mean, it's every once in a while we have a vote like that, but you know, 99% of the time it's no issue at all. And you make sure that you're exactly on, you know, with the correct number based on the census. So there's no question about whether you did this Excel spreadsheet correctly or whether you're a little bit off. You would know that you're exactly on with the correct number. So that was my recommendation. DESE said they'll agree with it. They seem to like the unit method, but I think it just adds a layer of complication that doesn't need to be there.
Can I just ask, is the census data going to be updated for that proportion every year, or is that something that goes every
10 years.
10 years.
They use a federal
Every
census.
10
Some
years
do it on the
census.
state census, but most places it's
So it's
federal
not using the
census.
town census every year for the numbers, it's using the state? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And I have it listed in yours as federal census. to read.
So, Russ, what were they going to suggest to change it to? Because right now Kingston has 2 votes, right, each?
So does Halifax.
Yeah, so-
Yeah, so we would have to calculate the percentage, which I think we actually did write down.
Because it does change a little bit.
Yeah.
So, I guess this is by member. Well, I don't think I want to rely on these numbers since I did them quickly. But it's approximately, it looks like each Kingston member would have 14% of the vote. Halifax would be more around 10%, and then Plympton would be 6% per member. But like I said, that was just me doing it quickly, so we would make sure those numbers are correct.
There's so much humor in this for us people from Plympton, by the way.
There's so much what?
Humor in this for us people
Oh.
from Plympton, you know? You were kind to say that Kingston gets 2 votes.
Well-
We've always looked at it as we get half a vote. You know, but it's like Congress, and the Senate, you know? We know that in Congress, we have no power, but we know in the Senate that if we stood up and walked away from the table, the meeting's over, you know? But we've always collaborated, we've worked through these differences in the size of our town. We've always worked for that common good of the students of Silver Lake. So, you know, I could really care less what method we use, whatever works easier for our recording secretary and our chair to deal with. It's fun. Like, it is what it is.
I have to make a comment as a math teacher that I find it ironic that the body in charge of renewing my certification doesn't get their percentages to add up to 100. They add up to 98.
Yeah. We'll have to give 14.7 each.
Oh, is it 14 and some change?
Yeah.
Oh, if it's 14 and a quarter, then that would add up to.
I'm not sure these are the exact figures.
Yeah,
Kingston.
No,
yeah,
it's
approximate.
so Halifax is actually 10.67. Is really what it
Right,
is.
so rounds up to 11.
Okay, yeah, that goes to 100 exactly.
But again, these are actually numbers I came up with, so we're gonna check those to make sure they're good.
Awesome.
But I think it's important also just to realize that it is based on population to an extent, and we represent our constituents to this percentage that we bring to the table, so if it's exact, it's exact, but to Jason's point, I don't think it's going to change the way we do business.
I just want to make sure that we're discussing these and understand these topics, because when we go to town meeting, we may be asked some very detailed questions, you know, why things are changing, so.
We still looking at early, mid-fall?
Yeah, so we're reaching out to the towns. Kingston already came back and offered 2 dates. I believe October 24th was the date that seemed to work best, so we're holding that. Halifax and Plympton will get dates from them. And this is one thing I wanted to talk about tonight. We have a lot going on, and we have deadlines with it. So what ideally I believe we should start to work on in the joint meeting before this would have been a place to also mention this. I believe we need to get some concrete steps with timeframes and who's responsible and move these things along. For instance, the regional agreement, will finalize it, talk with DESI on June 22nd. Hopefully it goes to DESI's legal and gets approved. I would suggest that we then invite the town officials to a Silver Lake meeting and open it up to the other committees as well. Walk through the regional agreement and the changes, get the officials on board. Also, prepare a presentation to have for town meeting. It might be overkill, but I think we need to do some, you know, PR perhaps and be very crisp. I don't want to stand in front of Halifax with nothing but a regional agreement that's in their warrant and try and explain it. I would like to have a PowerPoint with how we got here, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why it's important for them to support it. So I think we need to be very structured in this, and I think one of the big parts would be bringing the town officials into a Silver Lake meeting before fall town meeting and getting the officials buy-in. That's me as one individual.
They would be provided a draft, obviously, before the meeting.
Clearly, yes, yes.
And they are aware that this is going on also.
Yes, yeah. Then as far, go ahead.
Well, so they provided a draft, a clean version, and then a tracked version. The problem is the tracked version is, because your agreement was fairly old and had been updated, it's like really half red and half black. So I think Paula's idea of kind of having a synopsis of what's changed, like the more major changes. There's not a lot of major changes, it's more updating to make sure it complies with the current law. That's really what it is. But we can do a bulleted list of that instead of having somebody try to read through the tracked agreement.
Right. And then, obviously, the whole catalyst for this exercise, the pre-K being codified into that document and how we got there. And then the second part of this is, I think we really need to start to put some steps and, concrete steps and deadlines in place for the phase 2 part of this, which is transitioning some staff from the Silver Lake Union contract to where they should be. And I think we need to start to get our arms around that and get a game plan going. And then again, that's where the joint committee comes in, because they're impacted as well. So I would hold off on, kind of getting too detailed into that till we meet with the joint committee. But I do think that the clock is ticking. And I think sooner rather than later, because there's negotiations and other things that have to occur, we need to move a little bit faster on this to make sure we have enough time. So that was the update and the discussion I wanted to have there. Are you in?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Can I ask one
Sure.
question? Reading through your draft, the term vocational is still in there. Is that based on chapter 74? That you have to leave the word vocation? I mean, we don't call it vocation.
We could look at that. I'm not sure exactly where that's still in
Paragraph
there.
7.
But we could talk to Dusty because we have that meeting, so we could see if we could change it to a career.
Or at least spell out the career and technical education part of it so
Yep.
that we understand what we're talking about.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on that? Okay. And that's our last topic for tonight. Certainly, there's no vote, but that's our last topic for tonight. If nothing else,
I make a motion to enter into executive session, not to return to regular, under MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and if the chair so declares, for SLEA and SLAA and support, and an executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 38, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law for the approval of our executive session minutes from April 13, 2023, not to return to open session.
okay?
Second.
Roll call. Jason?
Yes.
Lucas? Jeannie?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Mike? Amy?
Yes.
Gordon? Myself as a yes. Thank you.